if we didn't acknowledge what happened in our county just a couple of weeks ago with the very unfortunate death of Kwame Nkrumah. Um, it's a very tragic reminder of why we do what we do. It's given me a chance to reflect and given me renewed purpose in our work. Um, Dalvin and I are interested in putting together a very brief statement on behalf of the Commission. We don't want to spend too much time talking about that this evening. We imagine that it may come up in future conversations, but certainly in at our meeting on February 8th, we can present like a very short draft of what we were thinking of sending, and we'll welcome input from folks before then or at that meeting. But definitely wanted to take a moment tonight to check in about that. Having said that, let's dive right in because we have a lot of stuff to get through. Um, First of all, we wanted to get a vote on the legislative review process. I know that there have been numerous conversations about the purpose and scope of our group and how we can best make an impact. These conversations about a potential citizens advisory group were happening for a very long time, even before we were created. I wasn't privy to all the particulars of those discussions, so as we're thinking about what we can do now, we're really turning to the statutes in terms of making sense of how best we can make an impact. And so we know that, as we've shared previously at one of our meetings, County Code 356F3 explicitly states that reviewing legislation is one of our duties. Based on our understanding of our responsibilities and after consulting with our really helpful colleagues, Mr. Camacho and Ms. Farag, Dalvin and I proposed the legislative review process that was shared with all of you. So we are mindful that there's certain things we're not able to do. For example, if we wanted to host a public hearing on a bill, that would be a lot of effort and it might be something that the county council does anyways. We're also very mindful that we're a group of volunteers and reviewing legislation on such a short timeline is really challenging. And we don't want to create unnecessarily high expectations of ourselves and create professional reports prior to weighing in on any particular bill. We want to sort of balance the need for being thorough before we come out in favor or come out against any particular piece of legislation, but also be mindful of our positions. So one thing I just wanted to remind all of us is, we've had some really great and excellent presentations from various county offices. We've learned a lot from the Citizens Academy. We've shared a whole bunch of research materials. We've had opportunities to learn from the MCPD, from the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. We've had academics weigh in with different subcommittees. We've had policy veterans from past presidential administrations. We've had so many different experts speak with us, and I think that's been great and that's made our work stronger. I also want to take a moment to recognize that we were appointed to the commission by the county council based on the tremendous amounts of experience and expertise that we collectively held as of July 2020. And so we are meant to represent the diversity of the county. I as I was looking at the statute in preparation for tonight's meeting, I recall that it even mentions that we're meant to have an emphasis on those disproportionately impacted by inequities. And I don't want to sort of use the phrase the perfect being the enemy of the good. I don't want us to be caught in inaction just because we're trying to make sure we do the exact right thing. But sort of wrestle with what it means to move forward, even as we're acknowledging the limitations of what we can do. So while we certainly welcome tons of input from the community, from experts, from all different stakeholders, I want to sort of remind ourselves that we are one part of the overall legislative review process as the council votes on certain bills and the county executive turns them into law. So let's approach it with the level of responsibility we've been entrusted with. And let's also trust that we are just one part within an overall ecosystem for reviewing this legislation. I know in the past we've heard about some arguments against weighing in on legislation, and I certainly want to lift those up. when we're looking at a particular bill, we might be limited by what's contained in the bill, right? And we're not necessarily able to add our own ideas or propose what might work better. We've also talked about how our recommendations can be used towards certain political motives or particular goals driving action on the council. Others have argued that it would be a wasted opportunity for the commission not to weigh in. And in certain regards, no matter what we might recommend, we can't really prevent someone from using our work towards a political end. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're representing the best interests of the civilian residents of our county, which is ultimately what we're here to do. I will apologize that I'm probably not capturing all the nuances of the different arguments that we've discussed at length. We had a separate special meeting just to talk about weighing in on legislation, and we've had a lot of input since then as well. So I really want to start off tonight's meeting by looking at the proposed legislative review process. By now, I hope we've all had a chance to look at it. I think Ms. Branson made an excellent suggestion that we should vote on the process before moving forward. While we don't have time to discuss in depth tonight, if we approve the legislative review process, we'll move forward as it's outlined. If we think this is not what we want to go with, and if it's voted down, we'll go ahead and vote on the specific bills as outlined in the agenda. But Dalvin and I will take some time to collect more input and see how we can frame it better going forward. So with
can I just ask one quick question?
Yes, please, go
because
ahead.
I don't actually have the legislation in front of me. In the event that a specific bill does not attract a full majority of the commission, that is 7 votes. Let's say several people abstain and it gets 6 votes. Do we have something in the rule which would tell us what that would imply? Do you need a full majority of the commission to recommend legislation?
Yeah, so Dalvin might be able to refer to the specific parts of the review process that's not in front of me right now. We're not counting abstentions towards the majority, but in the event that we do have a really large number of people not weighing in or voting against, we'll definitely make note of that. Our goal is to report the full vote to the county council in the letter we send. So if we end up having even 1 abstention, we'll certainly make a note of that in the note we send to the county council.
I guess I would like to push back slightly on that and say that I don't think the PAC should be recommending legislation as a PAC unless it has a majority.
And that's what it says.
We will certainly do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I
fine.
do have it pulled up.
Okay, and that's
Chair.
what it says?
Madam Chair, I do have it pulled up if you want it. Would you like me to read that?
Yes,
please.
please.
Yeah.
Number 7 of the proposed PAC legislative review process, a majority vote by the PAC is needed to endorse a bill. Abstentions will not count towards the total number of votes needed for a measure to pass. For example, if 2 commissioners abstain, then 6 votes are needed for approval out of the remaining 11. So a majority vote is needed.
I don't really, I think that's, I think if we're going to weigh in on legislation and recommend that legislation be passed, I really feel that one needs 7 votes of the commission to do that. But I mean, maybe I could suggest that that's an amendment and maybe people would disagree.
Well, they said a majority vote by the
PAC. But right, but the example you gave was of 6 votes and 2 abstentions.
That's just an example they gave in their
Right,
explanation.
but I'm saying no, you really have to have a minimum of 7 votes.
7, because there are 13 of us.
Yeah, abstentions, you have to have a positive vote in order to have a recommendation. But maybe I'm making too much of this. I mean, feel free somebody else to weigh in, but I feel.
I'm just reading what Dalvin and Shabab.
Yeah, no, I know that. I'm asking to amend it slightly.
Does that?
I think for now, let's go ahead and vote on the proposal as is. And we can revisit this in the future. And Robin, if you or others do feel that you can't back it as it is right now, we can certainly entertain a no vote from you or an abstention from you if that is how you feel right now, and we can revisit this at a future meeting.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and go for the
Is this an
votes.
open meeting?
It is, yes. We do have members of the public in attendance. So if folks would enter into the chat your votes, that'll make it easier for Carlos to record everyone's votes. You can vote aye or yes.
I beg your pardon?
Can somebody go over
Before we vote,
what we're voting on?
Madam Chair,
Would you like me to read it? Because I have it pulled up. Or does everyone have it?
Let's
Sure,
do this. Yes.
Madam Chair, I have my hand up. I'm seeking recognition.
Dalvin, could you?
Yeah, sure. Eric, go ahead.
I don't think that 30 days from the time of introduction is a sufficient time for citizen volunteers to make sense out of the legislation. I think we would be unable to express more than our preliminary hunches about the bill. What I'd like to do is to offer an amendment in paragraph 2 to strike out the words 30 days from when the bill was shared or assigned, to say 30 days from when the county council holds its first public hearing. I think before we start weighing in, we really, we at least ought to get the benefit of some of the information that the council has begun to collect. So that would be an amendment I would offer to paragraph 2.
Okay. Do we have a second for that amendment?
Yes.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So that was 6 ayes. Jerome was 6.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ms.
this
Branson.
is Cherie. This is Cherie. I vote aye.
All right, so the ayes have it, majority 7. So we'll add that, we'll make that amendment to the process.
Thank you very much.
Eric, you have something else?
That's it. Thank you.
That's it? Okay.
Well, in which case, I would
Yes.
like to offer an amendment that all recommendations by the PAC be supported by at least 7 members.
Yeah,
And-
I second that.
Okay, so we have a second. Just for clarification's sake on our part, before we ask for a vote, you're saying 7 minimum, even if we only have 2 votes, for example, like say we had 3 abstentions,
Yes.
you
Yes.
still want 7. Okay.
Yep.
So 7 votes minimum for legislation to be recommended by the PAC to the council. We have a first and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Yeah, just a question on that.
Yes, Mr. Ricks.
Since you've already said that is 7 would be a majority, right?
Right.
Yeah, but my question, so the reason I brought up that example was, say, for example, if we had a piece of legislation where we had 3 abstentions for whatever reason, that leaves the voting pool to be, say 6, right? So then if you had 6 out of the 10, that's still a majority out of the 10 that are voting. So that's why I was trying to get clarity on whether 7 was the hard answer, or say we only had 10 votes in that legislation, 6 would still be a majority. So I just want.
Yeah. 7 is
Well,
a,
I get it. 7, I'm gonna vote yes for 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're talking about a majority of those voting?
no,
No, 7.
majority of the
Period.
commission.
Plain
Majority,
majority.
7 votes, 7 votes each. So to clarify, if this passes, in order for us to recommend legislation, we need to have 7 votes minimum. All in favor?
Friendly amendment.
Yes, Eric.
Friendly, a majority of the members of the commission as constituted or sort of holding office. For example, we have a vacancy of 1 or 2. I would hate to be in a situation where is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rob?
I second that. Okay.
I'm not trying to be difficult. I just think we should be relatively united when we make recommendations.
Okay. So let me restate it then. All in favor of voting that if, in order for us to recommend legislation to the county council as they ask of us, we need to have a minimum of 7 votes.
No.
No,
Sorry, we need to have a minimum of the majority of those holding office.
yes.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And the ayes have it. So that goes in. Carlos, did you get those two amendments?
I'm gonna have to repeat the folks that voted affirmatively. So just give me 1 second.
No
Okay.
problem.
So on the first amendment that Eric offered for 30 days from when the county council holds its public hearing, I had Robin, Eric, Jen, Jerome, and Cherie
And Dalvin.
and Dalvin.
Mhm.
All
And
right.
Jasmine.
And Jazz. Yeah, and
Now,
Jazz.
Carlos, do you need everybody to enter in chat, or are you looking at us as we do this on screen, or do you want us
I'm
to?
looking at you all on screen,
Got
but
ya.
you all do
Would
it
it
at the
be-
same time. So that's why I'm double checking.
Got you.
So then here's what we'll do. To make it easier for Carlos, in the chat before we take any vote, I'm gonna write it like as a heading. Then all your votes will come under that. And then I won't introduce the next thing until Carlos counts it. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yeah.
I'm gonna write the heading into the chat and then you all put in yes or no, okay?
Okay.
So,
Right, but I'm on the phone, so I won't be in the chat.
Oh,
So
what-
you'll have
what
to
I-
affirmatively ask me.
yes, ma'am. So amendment 1. 30 days. Ms. Branson, are you an aye for the First Amendment, 30 days from the first public hearing?
Yes.
Okay,
I got her, Dalvin. Thanks.
okay, yep.
Wait, now, Dalvin, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that last, the heading again? Because I'm seeing Eric's entry here. I don't think 30 days is enough from the time of the bill introduction.
Right, so Eric's amendment was 30 days from the first public hearing of the bill, right? Did I get that right, Eric?
Yes.
Maybe that's not what, okay, because.
It's further up. It's a little further up from
Okay,
Dalvin.
I think it's because one of Eric's messages came in. I don't think 30 days is the
got you.
time of the bill introduction. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to put the next amendment because we already have 7 ayes. So I'm going to put the next amendment in now and then just put in your ayes there so Carlos can capture. 7 votes, majority of office holders. Good point, Eric. Amendment 2, 7 votes, majority of office holders in order to recommend legislation. And then now include your ayes or your nays.
Well, no, it's not the 7 votes. It's leave out the 7. It's just
Leave out the 7.
Majority of.
Why did you say majority of office holders? That's sufficient.
Got it. Majority of office holders. In order to recommend legislation. There we go.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
4, 5, 6. Just need one more. Ms. Branson, are you an aye on the? There we go. We got the 7. Jasmine 7. Okay, so we have those 2
Yes.
amendments. Okay, there we go. So those 2 amendments are approved and so forth enacted.
Question for
yes.
Carlos. Did
Yep.
I put my vote to everybody? Did you get that?
I did get your vote, Vernon.
Awesome. Okay, good. All right. So in the interest of time,
Well, we still have to vote, of course, on the adopted.
we do. Yeah. We're gonna do that right now. So I'm gonna do the same thing as I did for these 2. I'm gonna put, this is what we're voting for, and then you get your votes in there. Before we get started, so before we get started, we understand that a lot of these conversations are contentious. They can get incredibly tense. They can get incredibly frustrating. If at any moment you need a few minutes to just step off camera or, play with your musical instrument, whatever it is you need to do, please feel free to do it. Because I think also one of the things that we need to remember is that after this part is over, we are still going to work together for the next 2 years. That's still a thing, right? And it's important that we come out of this at least liking each other still enough to work with each other, as opposed to not being able to stand each other.
Should I mute when I go and do my?
When you get your cussing on, Mr. Ricks, you can do that. Does everybody have a copy of the legislative process? Does everybody have that If
No.
thank you, Jen. No,
I put it in the chat, Vernon.
Okay.
I uploaded the document, the Word document.
Yeah.
You see it? If you scroll up a little bit. At
Oh, there it is. Yeah. That's cool.
now, does anybody need a minute or so to read it to themselves before we vote on this? Do you guys need a minute or so to read it before we vote?
You say it's in the chat?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
a bit higher up, Vernon.
Is there a way someone could just share it to their screen quick so everybody can see it?
Oh, that's a good
Thanks.
idea.
Yeah.
Carlos, you mind doing that for us?
Let me try.
Are you able to do that? I have it, but I'm not sure how
Sharing
to.
my screen with Zoom in the past, but let's see.
That's easy.
Yeah.
Should be
Yeah, it's
easy.
easier.
I
I
know
can
it's-
share, but then I get lost
Yeah.
trying to
Middle
find it. Yeah.
Here, okay. I believe it's this one. All right.
There you go.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay. So you all see it there. I can read through it quickly if that's easier for you guys, or you can have a minute to just read through it for yourself. What's easier?
Oh, we can do it.
Just
You-
review
you-
it ourselves.
I think we've all learned to read at some point.
Yeah.
You might be tired of the screens, Dr. Gaster. You might be tired of the screens.
Yeah, it'll be all right.
I'll
Yeah,
give
but
you guys-
but I do need you to read it because
Oh, right,
I'm on
of
the
course.
phone.
Answers on the phone. Okay, there we go.
Sorry, Sherry. I shouldn't have. That'll teach me to be snarky.
All right, so I will read it. Okay. Step 1, when legislation concerning policing is introduced by the council staff will send the legislation to the PAC, whereby it is automatically referred to the subcommittee that the issues discussed in the bill falls under. In instances where it may not be clear as to which subcommittee should examine the bill, the chair and vice chair will assign the bill to a subcommittee. The website will include a list of bills currently under review by each subcommittee. Step 1. Step 2, the assigned subcommittee, and we just amended this one, will have 30 days from the first public hearing of the county council to provide a written recommendation to the full PAC as to whether the PAC should endorse the bill, take a position on the bill, and or provide any other recommendations or comments concerning the bill to the council. Number 3, after the subcommittee makes their recommendation, the PAC shall discuss the bill at a public meeting. In the interest of making a timely recommendation regarding the bill, the chair and the vice chair may convene a special meeting and or solicit comments from PAC members to publish on the website. Throughout this process, PAC members may individually share comments on the bill directly with members of the subcommittee. Members of the public may also submit comments on the bill on the PAC website. Comments must be received 1 week prior to the public PAC meeting for consideration by the commission. The PAC shall vote on whether to endorse the bill at the public meeting. We just amended this part. And what was the wording again, Eric?
Any recommendation requires a majority of the commissioners,
There we go.
of the currently
The
seated
first sentence
commissioners.
is perfect. Simply delete everything after.
Everything after that. A majority vote by the PAC is needed to endorse the bill. Don't worry about anything that comes.
Yeah, that's right.
The chair and vice chair shall send a letter to the county council within 1 week of the public meeting outlining the recommendations of the subcommittee, the vote of the full commission, and a brief summary of the discussion at the public meeting where the bill endorsement vote took place. Thank you, Carlos.
One question, I got a question on up in the first one. The bill will only go to that subcommittee? Will not the whole PAC get the bill and
So the bill's assigned to the subcommittee. So they're the only ones that are going to work on the recommendation. The entire PAC will see the bill, but only the subcommittee is required to work on the recommendations. Now, what we've done, and we've seen this even as we've done these first 3 bills, is that, like, for example, our subcommittee, I'm on the SRO subcommittee, we've gotten comments from other PAC members pertaining to suggestions that they've made and stuff like that. That's totally allowed. And that impacts our recommendation if maybe it's something that we've missed or something like that. But the recommendation should come from the subcommittee.
Right, and
Okay, so I think it's up in 2 or 3, but unless I missed it, there's nothing that specifically says that the subcommittee shall be notified when a bill is referred to them. It's implied, but I don't think it's specifically mentioned, and it should be.
Okay, so we'll spell it out clear. There's a second line that says whereby it's automatically referred, but we'll spell it out that that we'll send it to the subcommittee, so that way it's more transparent.
Yeah, because I don't think the automatic referral, I don't know how that works. I mean, somebody has to make a determination about where it belongs, right? And there are going to be bills that could potentially be in more than one subcommittee, right? I mean, there could be more than one subcommittee that has appropriate jurisdiction. So I think that needs to be spelled out.
Okay. Carlos, can you make a note for us to just spell that step out a little bit clearer, just so that way Shabab and I know to flesh it out more? Thank you. So what we'll do is whereby, so Carlos, you see where it says the chair and vice chair will assign the bill to a subcommittee? Move that up. So instead of it saying it automatically referred to the subcommittee that the issues discussed, remove that and just move the chair and the vice chair part up. So that way it's spelled out a little clearer.
Okay, so we're kind of taking out the automatic referral part.
And just
move
move
it to the chair and vice chair to make the recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's fine. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing so I can.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. So while Carlos makes that one correction, I will type in the legislative process thing, and then we can vote on it. Thank you for that, Ms. Branson. That's a good correction to make. PAC legislative process vote. And then we'll get down to the 3 bills that we have to review. Ms. Branson, with that change, are you an aye?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we have 7 ayes. Mr. Ricks, you are 8 on your 25th birthday. Thank you for getting us over the top.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
I'll add an aye.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, so let's get started. Carlos, what's the first bill that we're starting with?
The first bill is Bill 3420, Police Disciplinary Procedures.
Okay. So this bill we've reviewed for a few months now. We've reviewed for a few months. So this will be the short bill that we tackle because we haven't gotten to the other 2. So everybody's read this subcommittee recommendation? Yes?
No.
No? Okay.
You go over it, refresh.
Okay. You got it.
It was sent to everyone, yeah.
I understand that, but I don't like to vote on something that I'm not reading, and I'm not reading it right now.
Carlos,
Okay.
can you do the honors?
Please and thank you.
Sec, let me pull it up.
And would it be possible for somebody on that subcommittee to just read the recommendations part, not the whole thing? Just
Right.
the part.
Well,
Thank
Caroline authored this final draft, so I don't.
She's not on. Alicia, do you mind?
She's not. I don't have it. I can look for it. Let me look for it.
So I have, okay, the revised statement. Yes, I do have it. Would you like me to share it? Share my
No, go ahead and read it, Carlos. You just read that.
Share
Just-
it
just
and
the
read.
You already did
Share
it.
and read.
share it in. Okay.
Share.
Or at least,
One quick
yeah.
clarification. I don't think the subcommittee explicitly recommended that we vote one way or the other. So we were going to vote on endorsing the bill itself, is my understanding, not on the specific recommendations from the subcommittee, because that didn't clarify, because they didn't specify voting one way or the other.
Got it. Okay.
I thought that we didn't use the term vote, but we indicated that we are supporting the bill.
Okay. So
That's
that's
not
Okay,
clear?
that is very good to know. My apologies.
I
Alicia.
thought it was, I'm sorry, I thought it was clear.
No worries, no worries, no worries. So the subcommittee's recommendation is to endorse the bill, that the PAC should endorse the bill, yes?
Right, can everyone see it? I'll read it. I'll read Caroline's. The hiring and discipline subcommittee members of the PAC, having reviewed Bill 3420, share their comments on the bill. The subcommittee members agree, with one member abstaining, that the OBOR needs to be repealed or significantly reformed, especially with respect to disciplinary measures. The members believe that their views on LEOBR are relevant to the consideration of this bill because our understanding is that Bill 3420 represents an effort by council members to respond to the community's concerns about inadequate police discipline. And while LEOBR embodies the logical obstacle to ensure police oversight, Bill 3420 would move Montgomery County towards a system of greater accountability, even absent LEOBR repeal or reform. Point 2, the subcommittee has met several times a month since its inception. In addition to meetings, the members have researched, reviewed, and discussed a copious amount of material. Among, and this list is not exhaustive, the data research received and reviewed were the legislative history of Bill 3420, Professor Christy Lopez's presentation regarding LEOBR, the executive director of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Mr. Albert Liebno's memo response to the subcommittee member Eric Sterling's pointed questions regarding training of citizens for the LEOBR hearing panel, MCPD FC 300 department rules, the 2019 to 20 CBA between the FOP and the Montgomery County government. Next point. Our views are captured by the comments of the drafters of this bill. But none of, and to quote, but none of the content of our policies and procedures will matter if officers are not subject to quick, fair discipline for violating them. Through state law, in parentheses, LEOBR, and the collective bargaining agreement with the county, we have a slow, uncertain, and complex process to discipline officers for violations of department policies. This must change because we should have a department where the chief's ability to set a culture and hold officers accountable for meeting high expectations is strong. Officer Morris was convinced by a jury, was convicted by a jury in December for use of excessive force in July of 2019. Over a year later, he remains on the MCPD payroll, awaiting a final determination on his disciplinary charge. Similarly, the officer who used the N-word in White Oak still has not faced official discipline for her actions. We understand that an officer was once on paid administrative leave for 4 years while waiting for the appeal of their termination to be resolved. The reason these officers have not been held accountable is because we have a disciplinary process that doesn't work. Let's scroll down a little bit. And all of that was quoted, by the way. That's their quote from the drafters of that bill. The next point, the subcommittee members believe LEOBR should be repealed because it impedes the administering of, and again, when we state that LEOBR should be repealed, we're speaking of it in terms of our opinion, but also understanding how LEOBR was thought of when the drafters of Bill 3420 went about drafting their bill. From the words of the drafters themselves and also what I've shared already. The subcommittee members believe should be repealed because it impedes the administering of disciplinary measures to address officers' misconduct. It does so by affording officers protections that other public civic servants do, that no other public worker or civic servant enjoys. For example, officers may choose a hearing by a board comprised of mostly officers. Such a board composition and other aspects of LEOBR deny the police chief the authority to dismiss officers, even if he or she believes that the officer has committed a fireable offense. While officers are entitled to the same rights under the Constitution as all citizens, they are not entitled to more rights, than the very citizens, Carlos, I
Sorry.
can't, that are charged to protect and whose tax dollars pay their salaries. And I know that we've already had argument back and forth about that particular language. The next point, the foregoing having been stated, Bill 3420 addresses some of the concerns of the community, mandating a traditional hearing board with 2 voting public members in cases of citizen complaints alleging excessive force, and authorizing the chief of police to issue a final order based on the hearing board's recommendations and to exercise his or her right as an employer, meaning the authority to fire the officer. Finally, the bill would exclude a collective bargaining over the composition of a police hearing board, the right of the chief to make a final decision on discipline, and the right of the chief to issue a directive or administrative order implementing an employer right. Next bullet point. Expedited Bill 3420 would simply move the county back to the traditional hearing board authorized by LEOBR, including the additional public members for a case originating from a citizen complaint alleging excessive force. Under Leobor, if the chief wants to increase the penalty recommended by the hearing board, the chief must first meet with the officer to hear the officer's position, and the chief must state his or her reasons for increasing the penalty on the record. The final decision would be subject to appeal to the circuit court. Thus, Bill 3420 would not deny officers any appropriate due process protections, but would rather restore a system that accords full but not excessive protections to law enforcement. And the final bullet point. The subcommittee believes that, quote unquote, the voting members of the public should be enough in number that the public, by and through the public voting members, would have a real impact on the final decision on what disciplinary measures should be recommended for an accused officer. Respectfully submitted with one abstention. So we had 3 members of our subcommittee supporting this statement in regard to our support of Bill 3420, with 1 member abstaining who is present, if he would like to share his additional thoughts. Eric, would you like to share your additional thoughts?
Well, the time is the time. Yes, I would. My concern, I didn't join this statement. I felt that it was too much of a discussion about Leobor. And I sent everybody a statement on January 23rd. And so
Can you read that statement?
I don't want to read the whole, I sent it to everybody. What I'll just say is this, is that the bill's implications go to these 3 fundamental questions. Can the Montgomery County government change the way our police do business? Can any recommendations of the Policing Advisory Commission be adopted? Can the county council, the county executive, or the chief of police make significant changing in policing practices in Montgomery County? To answer yes to those 3 questions, Bill 3420 is essential. And I explained it in my memo that I sent to everybody dated January 23rd.
Which I do have, if I could share that as well.
Well, I'd like to ask Eric, that sounded, what you just said sounded like it was in accord with the bill.
Yes, I'm saying that I didn't join the subcommittee's report. I felt that discussing whether or not Leobor should be repealed or not is irrelevant to the question of should this bill be adopted. I think the bill should be adopted. And I laid out my reasons separately. I think this bill is essential to the entire basis of the work that we want to do. If you go to any of the policies of the Montgomery County Police Department, there are 130 policies. Everyone begins by saying, if a provision of a regulation, departmental directive, rule, or procedure conflicts with a provision of the contract prevails. This is of course referring to the contract with the FOP, Article 61. Essentially, every policy directive issued by the chief of police is only applicable if it doesn't conflict with the contract negotiated by the police department with the police union. If every person who reads the policies of the police department is put on notice, the union contract is more important for governing the police department than the policies issued by the police chief. That's just unacceptable.
I agree with you on that.
Okay, so, and Ms. Brewer has her hand up, and I want to get us to vote for this bill
Yeah, are we re-arguing stuff because we did a lot of sharing information?
No, we need to hear this also, Alicia.
Yeah, but we did a lot of, I thought that tonight we were voting and we sent out.
No.
PAC members, wait, hang on, Robin, hang on, RG2. The PAC members sent all of their comments, or they were asked to send comments and additional research and information to each of the subcommittees, if I understand the direction correctly. Okay.
Yeah, and I will say that while yes, it it doesn't make sense to relitigate everything. So I'm going to say this, Robin, I understand your point in terms of there's information that we may need to hear and things like that. And I think that that's valid.
Well, not that. That's not my point. My point is that I have not been part of any of the discussions, and neither has anyone else who was not on the subcommittee. We have to have a chance to address this.
And I'm not going to have something shoved down my throat just because the committee, the subcommittee voted on it and had discussion on it. I think that so also look for clarification. That's
yeah.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we should have time for that. Like if there's something that we need an answer on or stuff like that. What doesn't make sense to do, because I think this speaks to the heart of it, right? If we've had enough time to review statements that the subcommittees have sent us and any of that, then it doesn't make sense for us to relitigate them here, because we've had enough time. If we needed clarifying questions, if we had points that we needed folks to clarify for us on, we could have asked that before we came to this. Especially I will say on a bill that we've had that subcommittee has had for almost 4 months.
Sure.
If there was questions that needed to be answered, they should have been directed to the subcommittee when they submitted their statement over a week ago. Does that make sense?
I do have, and Mr. Drummer, the legislative attorney, as well as the staff from the council, their research, we received that, and we did meet regarding that, and we discussed that, and I have input regarding that if you're interested in hearing that.
Hold on a second, Eric, hold on.
If you're interested in hearing that.
Ms. Brewer's had her hand up, and then Eric, I'll come to you.
No, that's my point of order. Kate Brewer's had her hand up. She's been seeking recognition.
Okay, Eric, I understand. Ms. Brewer, Sergeant Brewer, sorry.
Thank you, guys. I'll be quick because I know we've had talked about it and I've spoken on it. I just want to make clarifying points. I have stated this before, and I just don't know if there's confusion or misunderstanding. A hearing board only happens if the recommendation by the chief is not accepted by the officer receiving the punishment. That has only happened once in 3 years, once. That alternate hearing board that just happened, it was chosen to be an alternate hearing board. I understand that this bill would remove the alternate hearing board, and that I understand that. But again, the traditional hearing board is the same way. It will only happen if the officer rejects the recommendation made by the chief or wants to appeal it. It is an appeal process. This will not speed up the investigation. The investigation into that officer's conduct is what takes time, not the hearing board. So changing that, I fear you guys might not see the quote unquote change that you want without understanding how that process happens. So the hearing board only goes forward if the recommendation of the chief's punishment is not accepted. Again, it's happened once in 3 years. The result of that alternate hearing board, which we currently have, was a termination of the officer. That was what the alternate hearing board chose, which was what the chief's recommendation initially was. The second point that I want to make about the comment in front and the beginning of each directive that we have, the SOPs, it is true, it does have that statement. However, the union contract, please understand, that's an agreement. That's not something that's simply the FOP's rights. That is an agreement. There are also certain things that are management rights. Many of the directives include simply management rights. For example, an order. There are a lot of things that somebody can order me to do, and there's nothing I can do about that order. I can be assigned work. I can be assigned a location. That is a management right. The union contract supersedes, but it's an agreement. It is not something that's written solely by the union without an agreement and a signature by our county executive. And that's it. If there's any questions, I'll answer, but thank you.
Kate, several years ago, we had effects bargaining. And it limited the chief's ability to make certain decisions that were important to the operation of the organization. It went on. The union took it to. They lost in court. They took it to the public, and they lost in the vote on the ballot. So does this, I mean, I want to make sure that the officer has the ability to have a fair trial as anybody else does, but not a bargained trial where it can hold up the operations of moving ahead with resolution of that particular concern and problem.
I think, so you're talking specifically within an internal hearing, I imagine, which would be where the hearing board would be. We currently have a third party. The alternate hearing board allows a third party neutral. So it's not somebody employed by the county, not somebody employed by the police department. That's an attorney usually. And that's what our alternate hearing board has right now, a third party uninvolved person. And that was the one that just happened that resulted in the termination of the officer. So I think the process, again, this is my opinion, I understand that. I think the process is fair in that we do have, we don't have 3 officers sitting on a 3-person panel. We have one union member, 1 management, and then 1 third-party person who is not employed by either one of them. And that hearing, again, is only done, I cannot stress that enough. The hearing only happens if the recommendation, the chief's punishment recommendation is not accepted. And again, some of his recommendations have been termination, and we've accepted that. We've had members of our department accept that.
Okay, Dalvin, can I respond?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm specifically referencing the research and material that was sent to us by legislative attorney, Mr. Drummer. Firstly, regarding the actual members who were on that hearing board. In 2006, and I'm quoting Mr. Drummer, in 2016, the General Assembly has authorized the addition of up to 2 voting or non-voting public members on a traditional hearing board. However, this provision does not apply to a collectively bargained alternate hearing board unless the parties agree to add citizens. There apparently has been no agreement to add citizens, voting or otherwise. Bill 3420 returns to the traditional hearing board, which would include members of the public. Looking at Chief Jones's synopsis of the other jurisdictions, which primarily have the alternate hearing board, we see that there is no provision of members of the public on those hearing boards. Only officers hearing matters concerning other officers and the independent arbitrator or ALJ. And then I had another point to make regarding something else that was stated by Ms. Brewer. And this again is Mr. Drummer's referring to his memo. Mr. Drummer states, for example, if the chief recommends termination and the hearing board sustains the statement of charges against an officer but decides that a suspension is more appropriate, the chief must accept that decision. This is page 2 of Mr. Drummer's memo. This pretty much exemplifies one of the most pressing problems of LEOBR in its current form that Bill 3420 would address, since the bill will exclude collective bargaining over the composition of the police hearing board and the right of the chief to make a final decision on discipline and the right of the chief to issue a directive or administrative order implementing an employer right. So I just wanted to, I'm just trying to pepper those in. This was the additional research that was sent to us. Thank you very much by Carlos. And this is Mr. Drummer's memo.
Thank you, Alicia. I appreciate that.
As well as, I'm sorry, I have one more point to make regarding the research that was also given to us by staff of the council. Again, I quote page 4. Again, if you take a look at that document that was sent, and it was sent to all the PAC members. Since July 1st, 2015, there have been 12 cases where the chief has imposed dismissal. 2 of those cases went to trial board. In 1 of those cases, the hearing board sustained the dismissal. And the other, the hearing board reduced the discipline to a written reprimand. Okay, so that to me indicates a problem with resolution of complaints. And I lastly refer to the MCPD fact sheet that was sent to us. Again, thank you, Carlos and Captain Gokinos, I believe, authored this. The Internal Affairs Division received 270 complaints in 2019 and opened 212 cases out of 270 complaints received. This was an increase of 9.76% compared to 2018. Of the 212 cases, 70 formal investigations were initiated. And this is even before we even get to the abysmal hearing numbers that I also shared with you.
Thank you, Alicia. I appreciate that. No, and that was shared with everybody before. With all of that said, because with all of that said, we're now going to move to vote on this bill. Ms. Branson, I see your hand.
Yes. So a couple things, I'm all into process. So first thing, I think it has to be clear that the vote we're taking on the bill is on the bill as it currently exists, correct? Because it can always have amendments, there will be work sessions, there can be amendments on the, so yeah. So I think that needs to be clear. And then the second thing I think we need to make some determination about is the documentation that will be sent forward regarding our vote. And whether we're sending, the memos or whatever it is we're sending to the county council, I assume. And that's the third thing. Who are we sending it to? And that and are we sending it to the council and to the county executive? Because the county executive, if the council passes it, will still have to sign it into law, right? So how far and wide do we plan on being heard? So those are the procedural things I think we need to determine, no matter what bill it is that we're discussing. Thank you.
So to answer your question, Ms. Branson, because those are really good points, Shabab and I have had conversations about that, about one, everybody would see what is being sent to the council before we send it, because we want to make sure that everybody agrees with things the way that they're written. Two, to make sure if there's any attachments that folks want to make sure is attached to the letter. So our plan would be to send a letter with documents attached outlining what the recommendations are, who abstained from voting and who voted in favor of. We think that that would make it as transparent as possible. And then I agree with your point, and it's something that Shabab and I have spoken about, is endorsing the bill as written, like you said, right? Because we don't want to endorse a bill today, and then that goes as a blanket endorsement for a bill that's going to take 2,175 different forms. So that's something that we've also, Shabab and I have said that we'd make clear in our correspondence with the council. So yes.
And then the final thing is I'm looking at this at the chat. I take it somewhere in our rules we have proxy voting.
Right.
That's a
Caroline
question.
mentioned that she has submitted her vote by proxy.
Yes. So
Share that
Caroline, yeah, and Jerome sent his votes to me. Yes. So and so did Justice, who's also not here today. So we're 3 folks short of a full deck to vote.
No, I'm asking, have we determined, because proxy voting is not the norm. And so I'm asking, have we determined and voted on that we shall in fact have proxy voting? I mean, because I don't want to, I don't have a problem with it. We're all busy. We all have, multiple obligations, but we have to say that. We have to say that this commission has proxy voting, and the process for the proxy voting has to be delineated. Okay. I mean, so, whatever it is, however it is you all want to do that, it's fine. But, we can't just pop up and have a proxy vote. we just can't do that. Okay. But we do need to make sure that there is a mechanism for people who may not be able to be here to hear their vote. And I don't really, I just don't remember, and I don't think we have had a discussion of proxy voting. Okay, so those are my little process things.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Ms. Branson. Thank you. So we can, before we vote on the bill, we can do that now, right, Shabab? We can just iron that out right now.
We could. We can also go ahead and vote for the bill, counting Caroline's and Justice and Jerome's votes as they indicated. I'm wary that we have had this bill with us since October, that this was not the first chance for the full commission to discuss the bill at a public meeting. That's in fact what we did at our last public meeting. So I just worry that we're spending a lot of time discussing things and having the same arguments over and over again. One piece that a few commissioners have highlighted to us is we welcome discussion in between meetings if folks want to share comments. And I really want to appreciate folks who've taken the time to do that. That is one way that we can make these meetings go a little bit quicker, and we'll, collect everyone's comments and share them out again. Much appreciation to Mr. Camacho for helping us out in coordinating that. So I'd like to move forward with the vote on 3420 tonight.
Can I just say something? Is there anything stopping us from making a motion to accept proxy voting, and that proxy voting means communicating to the chair or vice chair in advance of the meeting? Can we just make a motion to do that?
Yeah,
Sure.
we can do that right now.
Is there a
Yeah,
second to the
that's all you
motion?
need to do. It just needs to be on the record. That's all you
Okay,
need to do.
so I'd like to make a motion that proxy voting be permitted and that proxy votes be counted provided the chair or vice chair 1 day in advance of the meeting,
Second.
or 1 hour in advance. I don't know.
Yeah. All eyes.
I think it needs to be.
Aye.
Eyes have it. Carlos, please into our midst.
It'll just
Eric's-
be easier. Does anyone vote against the motion?
Eric voted no. Eric's the one
Eric
no.
voted no. Okay. And does anyone abstain? No. Okay. Yeah. So the ayes have it. Oh, thank you.
Okay. So now we've had the, so we're gonna do it the same way we did it earlier. I'm gonna put Bill 3420 voting as written in the chat. Put your vote underneath it so then we can go to the next bill, okay? We've reached the majority. We've reached a majority, so Bill 3420 will be recommended from this Police Advisory Commission to the County Council. Next bill, Carlos, please and thank you.
The next bill is Bill 4520 SROs. Is it 4520 or 4620? I'm sorry.
45.
4620 is SROs.
Yeah.
4520 is public safety, or is the data collection.
All right, so
One
we'll
thing
go
I'd like to recommend,
Yeah,
Dalton,
Shabab.
is
Yep.
since we have since the procedures we just passed mean that we won't be voting on this until after a public hearing, and there has not been a public hearing on this bill yet, maybe we can use tonight's meeting just to get the presentation from your subcommittee, and then we can move on, and then we can come back to discussing this after there's been a public hearing.
Not a problem. And just so you guys know, the public hearing was originally scheduled for January and it got moved to February 12th. So not next Friday, but the Friday after that. It was originally scheduled for the beginning of February. Okay, so for our subcommittee, which is as of today, Jerome, Jasmine, and I, but for you guys to know, Jerome is moving to the Emergency Response Subcommittee. We're gonna have our chair, Jasmine, read her statement, and then I'll add how we came to our recommendation. Jasmine, if you don't mind.
And Dalvin, if you would just very quickly explain Jerome's reasoning, so we just have it on the minutes.
Yes, just so you guys, Jerome is a MCPS employee, and he doesn't want a conflict to present itself with his job and being on that subcommittee. Yeah. Madam Chair.
So if our subcommittees have to have 3 people, who there'll be an assignment, or is it only for this bill that he is recusing himself?
That's a really good question, Ms. Branson.
I try to ask good questions. I try.
Ms. Branson, you asked the best questions, and I appreciate it.
Stumpers.
That's a good question. We'll get back to you on that. That's a really good question, but he is abstaining from this bill.
Well, I think he should have the right to make a determination of what's best and where he can work best.
Mm-hmm.
And if it means a reassignment to a committee, I would support that.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I just think that, that a subcommittee that only has 2 people on it, you know, is not in the same format as the other subcommittees. And so, you know, if he feels that this is potentially a recurring problem, then, you know, he can come on over to our subcommittee. We're totally non-controversial, ha ha ha. And you know, maybe we can, you know, figure something else out. That's all I'm suggesting. I'm just, you know, in the interest of transparency, and in the interest of, you know, democracy, we really
Right.
shouldn't have one subcommittee that has only 2 people. That's problematic.
Yeah, and Shabab and I have been talking about it to figure that out. So yes, yes. Jasmine, if you don't mind.
Okay, so it is my position that police officers do not belong in our students' learning environment, and I'm in full support of Bill 4620, which would prohibit the deployment of school resource officers. I take this position on behalf of all the Montgomery County students I've witnessed rallying behind this change. When our students are out in the streets protesting with signs asserting we need counselors, not cops, it is our responsibility to hear them. Over 30 student-led organizations have expressed their support for this bill, which includes but is not limited to MoCo for Change, MoCo Against Brutality, Young People for Progress, and the student member of the Board of Education. In addition to organizing protests, these groups co-sponsored a letter calling on Councilmember Juwanda to introduce this legislation in the first place, and have since produced infographics, held teach-ins, and met with government officials, all with the intent of advocating for the removal of police from our schools. As the youth member of this commission, I take my responsibility of representing the young people in our county very seriously, so I would be remiss if I did not express my full support for the bill on their behalf. I would also like to highlight the aspect of appropriations. MCPS counselor to student ratio falls well below the recommendation of the National Association of School Psychologists. This lack of support does not go unnoticed by our students. I just graduated from Clarksburg High School last year, and throughout my 4 years, there was it was clear to me that the majority of counselors were too overwhelmed with scheduling and administrative duties to actually have time to address their students' mental health and well-being. I believe that if our budget speaks to our priorities, we are doing our students, especially our students of color, a gross injustice by allowing $3 million to go towards police and schools while ignoring the repeated cries for better mental health resources. Lastly, I would like to highlight the trauma that students of color face when it comes to police officers in school. Trauma faced by students of color does not have to come from their own negative experience with an SRO. It can come from a negative experience with the officer outside of school, or simply by turning on the news in this country and seeing another person who looks like you murdered by police who aren't held accountable. As a student, I have never had a negative interaction with my SRO, but what I do remember is walking around the halls with his full uniform and a gun on his hip, and that is enough to strike fear in the hearts of many young people of color. I believe that if we let the voices of young people in our community be heard, then it is clear that it is in our best interest to remove police officers from schools and reallocate those funds towards restorative justice programs and counseling services.
And I will add, so because I think that there are a lot of times, and I think it's possible that when folks read this recommendation that they thought that we only spoke to students. However, our subcommittee sat in on a meeting with MCEA representatives in which they overwhelmingly voted, almost 60% of their delegation, to support this bill and remove SROs from their schools. Teachers shared experiences that they had with SROs pertaining to specific biases that they heard them mention. We received student and teacher testimony during this time that we've been reviewing the bill. MCCPTA, the Montgomery County Council for Parent-Teacher Associations, their diversity, equity, and inclusion delegation voted overwhelmingly to support the bill. Hold on, there was one more person.
Board of Education did not vote to support it, and they sent it back out.
Say that one more time, sir.
The Board of Education did not.
The Board of Education did, and so did 25 high school principals. However,
wait a minute. The Board of Education voted to send it back out, right, to the public.
Right. Yeah. Yes, the Board of Education and 25
not to support it.
No, I didn't. I said
okay.
I said five. It was 5 BOE members and 20, and we have on record 25 high school principals that have voted to reject this bill, that they do not support this bill. So
Okay.
yeah, so in Montgomery County, the groups that majority that have the entities that have a majority support that do not support this bill are MCPD, the high school principals, and 5 school board members. We have a majority of students, a majority of teachers, and a majority of parents that are saying that they support this bill and are asking for SROs to be removed from their schools and for the funds, $2.9 million, to be allocated the way this bill allocates it to community-based organizations and restorative justice practices, because as of right now, MCPS has 2 full-time restorative justice practice employees, 2 in a school system of 166,000 students. The other part, and because some of the arguments that have been made against this bill is that law enforcement SROs fill a mentoring role, right? That they are mentors, that they have relationships with their students. However, that's a role that can be filled by somebody else. That is a role that does not have to be filled by cops. And lastly, and I will leave with this because it is 7:52 and it's 7:53. MCPS has a culture issue where whenever a child displays normal adolescent behavior, teachers and principals, the first thing they do is call the SRO to try and deal with that issue. That is an unacceptable way to handle normal adolescent behavior. And I'm saying this as a person who has taught for 4 years, who has been a clinician in high schools, who has been a social worker. That is unacceptable. And if MCPS will not change the way they do business, then it is our job to remove that emergency hatch from them. Because we
for 16 years, and I concur with you.
Because we cannot expect law enforcement to put this on their plate where they have to respond to things that realistically, despite all the incredible training that they undergo, it should not fall on them to respond to that. It should not fall on them to respond to a child eloping from school, and then we get a situation like we got in the newspaper just last week. So we with one abstention, because Jerome works for MCPS. We support this bill as it's written with the appropriations that are allocated for the services that they've allocated.
Okay.
Jamie Copel and Lauren Hurley, the 2 guest attendees, have statements too.
Yeah, and we met with them as we were crafting our recommendation, and they overwhelmingly support this bill as it's written.
Okay, there are 190-some thousand kids in the school system.
166,000, I think, is the exact number.
Something up there. And I did not hear that 100 and whatever thousand kids supported it. We still have some societal problems that are out there that are not corrected at home, but are sent to the school to be corrected. Just recently, as of the last 3 or 4 days, a 13 and a 14-year-old or 14 and 15-year-old are members of the high school or should be in school. Is that not right? Members of school.
Sure.
And they were arrested for hijacking and assault. So we don't have angels in the school system. There are other concerns and problems in the school system that parents also, are concerned about. So I am against the bill, and that's my personal thing. And I'm recommending that we not take a vote on it. That we not support the bill.
So
Nadia has a response.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I know Ms. Branson also wants to speak. So, but I wanted to, one of the things to uplift is a couple of students seem to be, just look at the chat and just for it to be on record. There are 2 students, 3, I think, that are saying and uplifting what Jasmine shared. I want to just kind of emphasize that I understand it's important. Like I'm a little bit shaken by some of the comments right now because the narrative of having our young people as perpetrators is what feeds the school to prison pipeline. And what worries me is what I've seen since I was a young person, when I was profiled as a gangbanger, when my friends were profiled as gangbangers at school, which has led to a lot of different outcomes in our community. I think it is very dangerous to talk about our young people in a lens, in a very focal lens, when you are not taking into consideration what is happening in our communities. You're talking about migrant children that are coming at the ages of 12, 13 with no type of education or background. You're talking about students who've been in this county for generations, who have generational trauma. You're talking about young people who are facing institutional racism every single day. You're talking about kids that are being set up for failure in a lot of ways. I think Sergeant Brewer said, it is appalling that we refer to police officers as if it was their duty to take care of what we're supposed to be taking care of. I think us as a commission need to sit down and think about, there was an article circulating of a year ago, of a 5-year-old being arrested out of school, coming out of school, right? It's our duty to protect youth. They're going to be the inherent future of this county. I'm shaken, just not because of that comment, but because that type of thinking, it is what's leading our community to not look at the problem, right? I'm not saying every SRO is going to be in there terrifying and scaring young people. I've heard the story of the SRO at Einstein joining the jazz band. I know it, I get it, I understand. They're community members. They can participate and volunteer with the school still. They can support the students outside of school and mentor them. There are ways for police officers as community members to support the students without having to have a uniform or a gun in our schools. I will tell you that I was terrified to my core when the Einstein shooting happened, which everybody doesn't understand what happened, and I know exactly what happened, to come outside and tell my parents, do not come near the school, do not come pick me up because they're undocumented, and there was a complete wealth of police officers outside, to have my locker searched, to be interrogated, to not be allowed to go to the bathroom for hours. So when I'm talking about traumatizing and terrifying tactics that are being implemented on the students as a response of normal adolescent behavior, that is the problem that we have in our community, in our county. So Jasmine, thank you so much for the work that you're doing with our youth. I want to uplift all the voices that are here, but I just really want us to be mindful of the vote that we're going to publicly take today and the statement that we're going to be making to the rest of the county.
Montgomery County is taking the position. Montgomery County is taking the position that they will not
Branson wanted to speak
about their status and will not turn them in on their status.
So Mr. Ricks, I'm gonna pause you right there. And I believe me, I respect what you're saying. However, I think that we need to be incredibly careful, right? Because here's the thing, and Sergeant Brewer made a point about that. She has heard and she's seen that MCPS has a quick trigger, no pun intended, when it comes to going to SROs to have them resolve certain disciplinary problems. So that's not made up. That's not made up. We have a law enforcement representative here telling us that they have heard that is true. It is, I think we have to be incredibly careful in one, labeling the youth that we are tasked with making sure as they are members of our community that they are okay, with saying that there are problems that schools are supposed to fix, or saying, like, I think that there's a lot of things that we can say about our community. We have to be very careful about what we put out there, because I think that we have to, and Jen, you just made the point, 97% of the SRO involvement is at the word of MCPS. The school routinely calls an SRO and says, I need you to take care of this kid. If they're not willing to address that themselves, we need to address it for them, because it is disingenuous for us to lean on law enforcement, right? And then turn around and blame them when something goes awry. That's not fair to them. It is also unfair for us to say that parents haven't done what they're supposed to do, and that's why these things keep happening. That's also an unfair statement to make. And yes, Jen, one of the reasons why we support this bill is because council members Joando and Reamer state where they're going to move this money towards, right? And that, if it had just been removing SROs just to remove them with no plan in place, that would be a problem for us. But there is a plan in place. There's a plan in place for them to divert that money into where it's needed. So that way our kids have a fighting chance. But
That's only 2 council people.
$2.9 million does not pay for only 2 council people. It does not. It does not.
2 council people are supporting it.
I hope you all are looking at the comments in the chat section. There are comments from parents, there are comments from students.
Thank you, Alicia. And I'm going to leave it at this. In our work in getting to this point where we recommended this bill because we were supposed to just make the presentation, we spoke to parents, teachers, administrators, and students. We did the work to get to this recommendation. And while I respect and I appreciate Sergeant Brewer saying that it is an MCPS issue, it is. It absolutely is. Jen, just to your point, Jasmine mentioned that we have the worst student counselor ratio in the country. We need more money to hire counselors. There is not money there. And in this bill, which also the Reimagining Safety Task Force also endorsed, because this money is going outside of the MCPS budget to fund those positions. For us, it's an easy choice. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield my time to you.
Can I read a few of the comments here? Because I don't know if
one
Sherry
second,
or
Alicia. I'm so grateful for the community members that are here
yeah.
and adding their voice here. I just want to be mindful that this is a difficult matter, and I think particularly young folks and particularly young folks of color are very used to having their arguments dismissed. I'm mindful of the fact that unlike our neighboring jurisdiction in Tacoma Park, they're not authorized to vote in our county. And I want to make sure that that as we analyze this, I think it's extremely important to rely on the expertise of principals and others who've weighed in. But I worry that we are not listening to the voices of the most impacted and giving them due weight, especially because, principals are not being policed by SROs, or neither is it the job of SROs to police principals or teachers or counselors, right? We're looking at the students. So just as we're continuing this discussion, let's keep that in mind. Given that there has not been a public hearing on this bill, I would like to move that we table this discussion for a future meeting. The process we just voted on at the top of the meeting requires that we wait until a public hearing, which would give everyone an opportunity to weigh in. It's clear that there are many, many different factors to consider. What I urge all of you to do is, if you do have particular thoughts on this bill or on policing in schools more broadly, please go ahead and send those to Jasmine, who's the chair of the SRO subcommittee, who can share with, well, right now, just Albin, and make sure that it gets to them. If you have thoughts on the bills more generally, you can send those to Carlos and we can compile them and make sure that the full commission is able to listen to your feedback. I'd also, just in the interest of time, like to table our discussion on the additional bill 4620. Does someone from that subcommittee know if the public hearing for that bill has already happened?
No, sorry, don't know.
Is this 4520?
You mean 4520?
My apologies. Yes.
Is data. Yeah, data collection.
Frankly, I don't know. I don't know if there's been a public hearing yet. I don't recall.
Carlos or Susan, do you happen to know if a public hearing has happened?
For which bill? I'm sorry.
For the policing data bill?
4520.
4520.
I believe it has, because they've already had one work session on it and they've got another work session scheduled later, and I can forward that information to you.
Perfect. That would be really helpful. So maybe prior to our next meeting, if we can take a moment to review the hearing and look at the arguments that can inform our conversation as well. And
the subcommittee has already submitted a report on 4520. I mean, so
that's correct.
If you want to add that to, what the council does in the work sessions, that's fine. But we have submitted our report that supports recommendations that this bill go forward.
Certainly, and that's been circulated with the commission, and it is both on our Microsoft Teams, and it's publicly available, as with all subcommittee recommendations on legislation.
So we're not voting on that because I was, okay, so we're not voting on our recommendation regarding 4520 tonight.
We're not, I would just like to take some time to look at the public hearing since that's something that we've committed to doing in our process right now.
Can I ask
Robin, I
one?
see your hand up, yeah.
Yeah, can I just ask one process question?
Sure thing.
You know, the one of the main drawbacks of doing this kind of legislative review is that we appear to be doing it in a sort of thumbs up, thumbs down kind of way. And it does seem to me that if people feel strongly about something in the legislation and would like to see amendments, maybe there should be a process where they can circulate that proposed amendment to the legislation and say, we're going to recommend it, but we also would like you to look at this. I don't know. I mean, I just feel slightly uncomfortable being in this binary straitjacket where we're going to say yes or no, when most of these issues have nuances and you know, and we're working here on these issues. Maybe we have better insights and can suggest appropriate amendments. So it's just a thought. I don't want to push it too hard.
I really appreciate that idea, and that's in the interest of us not discussing those amendments as a whole body or coming up with them. Maybe that's something for the subcommittees to consider. And then once the subcommittees have an idea for an amendment, we can discuss them as a whole. But
I think that's fine. I think that's a good idea.
But we're not here drafting the law.
No, but if, you know, like, you know, the, let's say the data piece, right? What if we have an extra data piece that we think they're missing? And we feel they should be really adding this to the list of things that MC.
Then I agree with that, you know, submitting, well, you know, perhaps, you know, can we look at this other data?
Right,
But not,
right.
This
Not,
is the amendment that I think.
yeah,
that should
maybe
be made
not
to
an
the bill.
amendment, but
not in formal language, but just suggestions for improvement or things to consider.
Yeah.
And as it is, our plan with the letters we send forward is they'll contain a summary of our conversation. So it won't just be, here's how we voted. It'll also be, this is what the subcommittee wrote after much consideration. These are the reactions that the members of the commission had to what was stated in the commission. So
we submitted our comments, we submitted our material.
Exactly. It'll be contextualized a little bit more. And our hope is not to focus just on the thumbs up, thumbs down piece.
Yeah, good.
With that, I'd like to move to close. I appreciate all of you sticking around for a little bit longer. And once again, my apologies for being on the road for the top half of the meeting. We'll meet again on February 8th. Once again, please send your comments to the subcommittees looking at particular bills or to Carlos, who can collect and share out. On February 8th, we're also just gonna look over a very short draft statement to acknowledge the incident with Kwame Okran, the very unfortunate murder of Kwame Okran, and really use that as an opportunity to renew our commitment to this work and to ensuring justice in our communities.
I have a question of Susan and Carlos. Do you know where the Reimagining group is in their
racial audit?
Which piece they're sending? The task force itself is sending its recommendations to the county executive right now. So they should, I believe they're due to go public on the 28th.
So
the racial audit?
The audit itself, the preliminary findings of the police department audit are due in the spring, the preliminary results.
But that's their complete report of all the committees is due on the 28th, you said?
Right, the actual civilian task force members.
Okay.
Well, there's two things going on. The civilian task force members are making their recommendations to the county executive now, and that report should be public on the 28th. And then there's also Effective Law Enforcement for All as a consultant who's doing an in-depth audit of the police department. That is an ongoing process.
January, right?
28th of January, correct. And then the actual audit itself, the preliminary findings are due this spring. I don't have an exact date yet.
Thank you.
So will you all, Susan and Carlos, will you all be sharing the Reimagining Task Force recommendations with us?
Absolutely, as soon as it's public. Yep.
Delvin, you had something to add? Oh, okay. Excellent. Well, then with that, let's adjourn and we'll see you all on the 8th. Thank you,
Carlos,
everyone.
is there any way to capture the chat comments and send those off to the PAC members? Or is there any way to do that?
That would be excellent.
I do not know if I can. I've tried to copy and paste these chat.
Because
and
there are parents, students.
I cannot. I
think there's
tried
a
to
teacher
summarize
here.
the comments as best I could. But I'll try to see if I can get a verbatim.
Carlos, I think Zoom allows for that. I can send you a link that explains that a little bit more.
Yeah, at
I've
the
been
end, when
reading
you
them.
have to save the recording, it should ask you, do you want to save the chat? It should be an option
Okay.
after you're backing all of this up to wherever you back it up to.
A question on that. You said that there are student and other people's.
They're here. Yeah, their comments. There are tons of them. Tons of comments addressing some of what you said, even Mr. Ricks.
Well, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. To me,
No, it's helpful. Yeah.
To me, it wasn't a public hearing.
It was a public hearing, Mr. Ricks.
It's a public. It's an
Oh,
open
it's a public meeting, so.
A public meeting, not a public hearing.
Right.
Right.
No, I'm just saying that it's very helpful to see that. I think it's very helpful.
I just, if the meeting was going to be a public hearing where outsiders would be commenting on our conversation, then I would see that differently.
Well, they're here.
Call it a public hearing.
They commented. They have numerous comments in the chat section. Yeah.
So all of our meetings have been public and we've had folks commenting in the past.
I thoroughly understand that, but if I go to a county council meeting, I don't get to comment until it's either the public part of it. I can always send in stuff, but I don't get to comment on what's going on in the council until it's the public session part of it or what have you.
No, they haven't voiced their comments. They just wrote them in the chat section.
There's not any substantial difference. I mean, I understand Vernon's point is that, while this is a public format, right? And for transparency's purpose, we need that. But the question becomes whether the comments in the chat section become a part of our record, right? That's really the issue. Whether
they're not part of the record
become a part of our record.
Can
the
commission?
That is what at this moment is unclear. Are they part of our record?
I think they should
not?
I think we should be able to.
Okay, like I said, that is what is unclear.
Right. So it's not part of our public record, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be. I took Alicia's point simply that allow all of us to look at it, since there have been so many and it's hard to keep track. We can then leave it at the discretion of the subcommittees if they want to do something with the comments.
No, we can't do that. We can't have ad hoc process. Process has to be clear, it has to be stable, and it has to always be the same. And so if the chat is going to become a part of our public record, then we have to say so. If the chat is not going to be part of our public record, then we have to say so.
Not going to be part of the public record.
Okay, then I think we need to be able to vote on that. Apparently, there are people who want it to be a part of the public record, and that personally, I'm not comfortable with that.
If we cross that bridge, we can certainly vote on it. I just want to make sure that we're not changing the process.
Right. Madam
All
Chair, can
we are
we
doing right now is
just look at it? Yeah. Can we look at the comments?
The comments is not a matter of the public record. So
I invited people to look at the comments because I understand that we are here. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Alicia, please go on.
Yeah, but I understood that we are here as in some way representatives of the community. And I would, for one, would like to hear from the community. I think Madam Chair has expressed a desire to hear from the community. Well, there it is. Well, that's all I was saying is there are plenty of very interesting and helpful. That's all I was saying.
That's
Yeah.
totally
Very interesting
different.
and helpful
If
comments
we are
right here.
taking the comments in the chat as a part of our informational resource, that is fine and dandy. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
That's all I was saying.
The question becomes
That's all I was
whether
saying.
those chat comments now become a part of our public record. That's a different issue, which we have not decided on. In the Zoom age, we really need to be very clear.
And that was what I
so
heard. That's what I heard coming out from Alicia.
What did you hear, Mr. Ricks? That
Well, I was hearing
that we do want to
this
hear. We
happened
do want to
this.
hear from the community, right? We do want to hear from members of the community. Yes.
If
yes.
I think we need to be informed by what is in the chat. I'm not sure the questions and comments that are in the chat then become a part of our public record. That's
right.
that's
But
the
all
only
I was
that's
saying
the
is
only
that
problem.
all I was saying is that I hope everyone gets a chance to look in the chat section because there are a number of teachers and students. There are some very helpful comments there. That's all I said.
Right, and that I accept that, I understand that, and that's a starting point.
But that
That
indicates
is
to
not
me.
the end point. And
Yes.
the end point is our decision about whether the comments that are in the chat now become a part of our public record. It's really a simple question.
Right.
And if they are not a part of our public record, then we will make a decision to record them and to distribute them so that some of our members have already gotten off of this call. You know, they need to be informed of what is there. Then it becomes a part of the commission's file, which is not necessarily part of the public record until maybe later. So
I think Madam
we
Chair
have
already
to
decided
make a
regarding that.
decision procedurally about what this means.
Yeah, I think Madam Chair already chimed in on that. I simply reference
Well, I'd like to
my
hear from
understanding.
Madam Chair about what the
Yeah.
decision is because it's unclear to me.
Goodness. So my understanding is entering something into the public record and sharing it are separate. The only thing we've discussed so far is saving the comments. So I don't see any reason to vote on whether we're adding them to the public record since we haven't made a decision on that. If someone would like to propose a motion about that, I'm happy to entertain it. I don't think we have a quorum right now, so we can't even vote on that.
Yeah, I don't have a quorum.
No, what you need to do is to ask the council's attorney who is assigned to us about what we must do in this instance. This is not, you know, we can have a whole lot of different opinions, but what does the Open Meetings Act require us to do? That's what we need to decide on. And that would be the most helpful opinion would be from the council's attorney, who is the expert in the Open Meetings Act.
And I have a question on the chat. Is the chat available to the general public?
So on all Zoom meetings, you can choose to send your comments to everyone or to specific people. If we send it to everyone, yes, anyone who's logging in is able to look at it. So far, we have not entered them into the public record.
Yeah, all of the comments I'm seeing, Mr. Ricks, are to everyone. They're literally written to everyone.
Right, so that becomes public record.
They don't get saved as part of the recording, and comments from past meetings have not been entered into the public record.
Well,
if we want to change that, I'm open to it, and people are welcome to make a motion towards that end at a future meeting.
To me, the chat should be for the committee, for the commission. In other words, if I had something that I was concerned about and I wanted to talk to you or to Dalvin or to anybody, then that should be between us, not out to everybody to read the chat. I mean,
okay, so you don't want the members of the public to have any, that you don't want to, because they're not allowed to speak during our meetings. So you're saying you don't want them to be able to chat? What is it that you're saying?
Well, I mean, I'm taking the example of when I sat on the City Council of Tacoma Park. Somebody might send me a note or give me a note that it was not what I didn't read the note publicly necessarily, because the note was for me. That was my record, not public record yet. To me,
Right, so then you would send that note directly to me or directly to whomever you wanted to send that message to.
but if everybody in here is able to come to our meeting publicly and with the open public meeting, and you put a chat in something in there and everybody can read the chat.
No, only if you send it to everyone. That's how chat works. Only if
Can
you write.
Can we just get a read from the council attorney about what we must do under the open? Under
Yeah,
the
but I'm
Open
trying to
Meeting
address
Act?
Mr.
And
Rick.
if
I'm trying to
if we
clarify.
decide, and if
I already heard
whatever
that.
the council, I know you heard it, but maybe you didn't hear it, and I'd like to say it clearly.
I was just trying to address Mr.
And
Rick.
if the council attorney determines that we have to do whatever it is we have to do, then that is in fact what we will do. And when we have another meeting, we can inform the members of the public that your comments that you place in the chat will be X or Y. That is what we owe them. Okay, that is what we owe them. So it's not really about what anybody's personal preference is. It's about what the law requires.
So Mr. Ricks, if you want to send a comment directly to a member of the commission, there's a way that you would do that within the chat room.
I understand.
And the rest of, and nobody else but that person would see your comment.
I understand that. I'm saying that you made the comment that the chat should be a part of these proceedings for the day.
I did not. I said, would you please, I think that
if somebody puts everybody on the message, then it becomes public.
Mr. Ricks, I said, I said, I hope everybody glances at the comments because it's very helpful. We're hearing from the community. It's helpful.
I'm ready to go get my
We're currently being recorded, and this is going to go into the recording.
Yeah, I don't understand the argument. I really don't
quite
understand.
embarrassing that we're having.
Yeah, I can go with Cherie said, get a public. I mean, I don't agree with you, and I'm ready to go get my cherry soda. So,
Madam Chair, what were you saying?
Let's please cut off this very embarrassing public conversation right here, and we can see each other on the February 8th.
Yeah. Okay. And you'll let us know what Sherry's comment regarding the. I guess Carlos can have the attorney send to us regarding the public record.
That tomorrow.
Issue. Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. I'm going to stop recording now.